in the
You see, PJ, you see,
audience list. Yeah, hi PJ. Long time no see.
PJ is
Hello.
now in our corporate comms
Member.
team.
Hi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm in communication design lecturer. Kat over here, which is my co-host, she is my student, a junior in year 2 currently. And she prepared some questions. We've been collating some of them. So we're just going to kind of take it away. I'm just going to throw the first question to Wei Choon first. The co-founder of Walk Salaryman, also a part-time lecturer at NTU, and experience in mothership and things like that. I've seen you talk about your own personal life, like your origin stories, and but I think a lot of people maybe do not know the why you started Walk Salaryman, and I think you started in 2019, if I'm not wrong. Very close to the COVID period. So what was that like? And maybe for the students that are tuning in, thinking about doing illustration as their work, or part of their work. How might you advise these people?
So I'll be blunt because we are a page that talk about money after all. One of the most primary factors of why we wanted to start the Work Salaryman was to earn money. And what you do when you start a business, not saying good or bad, and business and entrepreneurship is not something that should just be blindly advocated to everybody to do, because it suits a certain type of personality, it suits a certain type of life goal, and you can have a great life being an employee as well. And that's something that I strongly believe as well. So if the business falls, I'm not that sad because I have a good portfolio. I just go back doing a job. It's pretty good. So we wanted to earn money because by owning the business, we will get more margin from the work that we do. And this was something that was hard for me to reconcile as an artist, because when I was in uni studying art in NTU, right, I found it very taboo to put money and art together. And I thought I would never ever say that in the same sentence, because I must never sully my passion and my craft by talking about remuneration. How dare I, right? But then later when you graduate, you understand, like, okay, a certain amount is needed to have a basic standard of life in Singapore. And okay lah, I don't consider that I've sold out. Some people would say that what we do at the Work Salaryman is selling out because we are sponsors. But I think if anybody wants to subsidize my artistic life and be my patron, they are welcome to pay me money, and I'll do art all my life. What I do at the Work Salaryman is not what I consider my best artistic technical work. It is something that is enough, and it's not just enough for me or my sponsors, it's also enough for our readers. And that is something that I have to learn a lot when it comes to the idea of putting aside my artistic ego to serve the goal. The goal, which is not just earning money, but also communicating the things I want to communicate. What my co-founder always reminds me of is the idea that done is better than perfect. And that is something that I still need to be reminded of day in, day out. And I had this battle all the time because I'm still an artist. I still want to do nice, beautiful things. But nice, beautiful things oftentimes are expensive to do. They're still worth doing, and we still try to find space to do it. But we have to be realistic and practical also. So when it comes to the idea of, I have a very long-winded answer, but why I wanted to do this, I was also a bit disillusioned after a few years of working in the artistic industry because we don't get paid a lot. Nowadays, it's even harder with AI and COVID making our competition regional. It is very easy to replace a role of an illustrator. I mean, let's be frank. I'm not talking about present company here because there's some excellent people here with very unique selling points. But if you're just a pretty good illustrator with no unique aspects, well, it's going to be tough because there's regional competition, people who can work the same thing that you do for 1/5 of the price. And now got AI some more. So how? So we have to be realistic. And what I love most about the Work Salaryman is that I've created an entity that is able to pay the artists that I employ a good salary, and I'm very proud of that. Yeah.
Right.
Long answer. Sorry, I'm so long-winded.
No, that's great. I think it's true. It's probably going to be quite challenging to be a illustrator, or maybe just breaking out into anything. But it's very very fair points, right? That you need to have the right perspective and also find your niche and try to continue to push that forward. So I think that those are great insights. Thanks. How about Yikchun? I think some people join a bit later. If the year threes if the seniors are already inside this call, they will know that you're actually an alumni. Back when we both were studying visual communications, now communication design. And well, yeah, you did a lot of things. I was looking through that you're art director at Editas, Ogilvy, then you're doing data visualization, some writing stuff at OGS, and now you're assistant lead of Rebit. So I think you're also talking about, changing with the times and moving, finding your identity and, creative passions. So I'd like to ask you, how has this journey shaped you and the way you have approached design and storytelling?
That's a really good question. So I think when we left school, or at least when we were in school, there was a very idealized version of what a graphic designer should be. And I think in some ways it's similar to what Wei Choon brought up just now, where it's like, oh, I am solely about my craft and I will do the best for my craft. And what I am looking for is like to be happy with my work and perhaps also like peer recognition. But it was never about like, I want to be there's no award for the top selling graphic designer, I don't think. Yeah. So yeah, maybe there will be now. But I think when I left school, when I graduated, and then eventually after NS and the time came to look for a job, it was more about figuring out what I can do and what the market needs and how that like sort of like dovetails together. But along the way, it did teach me a lot about how the stuff I learned in school can be applied and how that has actually changed and informed a lot of the personal reasons why I do work as well. So the illustration side of things has always been there. The data side of things came in more from when I was agency side, where you always hear a lot of people talking about strategy and stuff and how it was easier to lean into an idea and justify something even to a client, or even like why am I choosing to go with this font, for example, because it is more legible. It's as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like very qualitative or quantitative stuff to like determine whether or not like that is the correct path to go, or at least get you 70% of the way there. So to me, the data storytelling part of it was very, very interesting. And over time, you start to read a bit more and you talk to a bit more people, and you realize that actually, besides using data to sell stuff, it also reveals a lot of like other things about society that we don't always get to see. Yeah. And data is not just like ones and zeros, it's not just like looking at a spreadsheet.
Right.
And I guess that's kind of how I ended up at Ribbit, where the general consensus or thought that we had at the time was that like I really hate looking at bar charts and pie charts. I really, really hate it. And I had been following a data journalist named Mona Chalabi for quite a while. If you are not familiar with her work, I would suggest like looking it up, because I think she is an inspiration for a lot of people in terms of like democratizing data visualization and storytelling and making it more entertaining and accessible for a lot of people. To the point where like she was awarded a Pulitzer for her work, which she has since returned. But I guess the point that I have a very roundabout way of getting to is like I looked at her work and thought like, okay, so I can kind of get somewhere similar, because I want to do data and I can illustrate, and I kind of wanted to use that to do good. I want to convey information in a way that's like accessible to people, and I want more people to be able to access certain bits of information. Yeah. So gradually along the way, it's like I can't chart a clear path as to like where it happened, but it's just sort of like cobbled together along the way. And I think we are still cobbling ourselves together along the way and like learning how to do certain things. So for example, like we needed to like put together a chart, but there's no way to script the data without a very convoluted coding method, for example. It's like, okay, so maybe I should start learning Python. Maybe I should start picking up like Flourish. Like, okay, maybe I need to learn how to edit video now because like this would work better as an animated explainer. So then that's how a lot of these things generally happen, and a lot of stuff happen outside of school. It's just like I have to do it in order to make this piece the best that I can, and so therefore I will learn it myself.
Right, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I feel like of any industry, I think in the creative industry, we really embrace lifelong learning. We were almost like we were lifelong learners before we Navy-fied it. You know, always picking up new things, having to learn new tools and learn new strategies. And you know, first with the big data, and now AI, we're still gonna have to learn and evolve in that process. I think it's a very great representation of how you kind of like stumble into the thing and kind of evolve through that process. Especially in, from coming from a school background into all these new technologies. Yeah. My next question is for Qiyun. You know, just to let you know, I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but I think in schools now, like sustainability is kind of very big thing. Sustainability and design is like such a huge thing. TP just did a national design project where we even went to secondary schools to work with them with design thinking. Our student like Kat, I'm sure like has to do like so many modules on sustainability. It's like almost like sustainability is almost like in every subject to that certain extent, which was never the case, right? So I guess the needle moved a bit. Maybe whether they feel jealous or not, I'm not too sure. But as a sustainability consultant at Unveil, and also you started your own content creation and illustration, the weird and the wild. How do you think about visual communication, storytelling? When you studied something like environmental studies, because ours is the opposite. We are design trying to learn a bit more about sustainability, but in your case, it was almost the opposite direction.
Yeah. I think for me, I felt that I was always keen about sustainability. My dream would have been to be a zoologist if I could, but I guess similar to the art scene, some of these degrees is like cannot make money. It's really just pure passion and love for the craft, for the cause, for I guess nature that it drives us to do what we do. I was only very lucky that sustainability became a thing over COVID, because when I applied to do my degree, I actually wanted to do political science first, and then my parents already made a hell lot of noise. And when I switched courses in my second year, they made even more noise because they were like, what are you gonna do? Catch mosquito and pick litter? Like, is that your life? But I stuck with it. And I think it was really because I felt that finding creative way to do things has always been something that I was very keen on. I was a big comic book lover. I love all things art. Never had the courage to pursue art like the rest of you all. And it was only in the third year when I realized that I just felt a lot of dissonance with what I was seeing as communications material on bus stops, where the only thing about being sustainable was the government telling you all sorts of naggy messages like bring your this one, bring your that one, don't do this, don't do that. And I felt like it really misrepresented what my community was about. It misrepresented what we stood for. It to the point where when NUS, I did NUS environmental studies, and when they banned straws overnight in my third year of uni, everyone blamed the environmental science students for, see lah, your fault. So yeah, it just made me very upset because this was not what sustainability has to be, because it's so much more. I had friends who would crawl in longgangs to find frogs, who would dive in local waters to find coral reefs, or were studying the most random cockroaches. And I thought like those were the stories that you don't get to see, you don't get to hear, and you don't get to appreciate. And because of that, you don't see our work as valuable or important. And not just that, when you Google something like sustainability or recyclability of plastics in Singapore, in 2018, you couldn't find any information telling you that certain plastics cannot be recycled in our local facilities. All the information that you got were from the US. And I felt like, okay, I needed a way to capture the attention of non-interested people. And I also got my iPad at that time with my first Apple Pencil, and I thought, okay, why not let's try something? Because if certain messaging isn't going to work, I will need to hide messaging under things like illustrations, a cute graphic that tells you the world's going to end, because so that you don't feel like it's actually going to end. Trying to use colors and all this imagery to sort of massage my message in a way that feels palatable, but you don't realize that you're learning until you get through it. So I guess that's what caused me to do that pivot. It was an unintentional pivot, but it was to fill a gap that I felt very upset about.
Right. That's really cool. I think I like what you said about like massaging massaging insights and massaging all these things and realizing you're learning only at the end. I think it's quite true. I can say for the group that's here today, it's like, in a sense, money, for example, is a taboo topic. Or there's some things that you're not really interested in or wouldn't naturally expose yourself to. But that stories kind of like lure you in, and that whether it's cute graphics, whether it's interesting designs and juxtapositions and things along that lines. I think it kind of opens you up and nudges you into a new space. So I really appreciate what all of you guys are doing in your own different areas. I wanted to also talk a little bit about your creative processes. So I think you already mentioned it a little bit, or at least what's important to you. Maybe what do you feel is the most important thing that you think about when you're crafting a message and a story for your viewers, or thinking about attracting new viewers? Maybe you start from Wei Choon.
I would think about the goal first, because it's like the saying, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody sees it or hear it, did it really fall? So I get that some things are nice to be expressed, like you express things for your own sake as a therapy thing or what, but I always like to think about spreading it, and I like it to affect somebody. I want my works to have some sort of scale, even if it's just one other person that's affected. That is a good thing, I think, because it should be a transactional way. Like John Mayer once said something like, what connects with people is you connecting with yourself. So even if you connect with yourself as a means of expression through art, it should also be in the back of your mind of like, if I show this thing to people, how would they feel? So I always keep the goal in my mind, and I have to do that because it is so fun to draw. As artists, we love the act of drawing and illustrating and creating, that it's so easy to get carried away by the process that you forget what you're doing. And you have to think about opportunity cost as well, especially if you're running a business. Even if you're doing it as a art for art's sake, if you have any plans of wanting to do multiple things over your lifetime, like you have to think about time management. So it's also opportunity cost on your next work if you spend too much time on your current work. So I always like to think about the market forces, not just money wise, but audience wise. So I have to remind myself, drawing is fun, but let's keep the goal in mind. What are you actually trying to do? That's something I keep in mind in my process.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think we have some like UX people also at in this call. I think no matter what we are passionate about, we have a tendency to get kind of lost in it, sucked into it. I'm sure some people who like to do research, they can just like, I just want to research like my whole life, and then like, okay, but somewhere along the way there needs to be like some sort of reality check, and like we need to move this to a next stage. So it's not about perfection all the time, not how much you can keep getting out of that process, but it's also about getting things done and getting things out. So I love that. Chun, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think I'll just add on to like what Wei Choon has mentioned, because as a sort of like, as part of a brand and as people who have like financial targets to meet, whatever Wei Choon has mentioned does ring true for us as well. And I would say the only thing that is a challenge to us in terms of finding and making sure our content reaches the right people is also deciding how much information we want to put into a certain piece, and deciding how much of it we actually want to say. Is it enough? Is it not enough? So that balance is very fine, even down to how much text you put on one frame. Yeah, if you have too much text on one frame, perhaps you need a breather for the next. So everything is about, it's a whole balancing act. And at the end of it, like what Wei Choon said, is ultimately like whether or not you can convince the person reading it that, hey, this is important to you. Yeah. Do you have enough on your page or in your post to convince people that this is actually important? And are you appealing to the correct part of their brain? Yeah.
Right. I think that's a great point. I think students or even adults, sometimes we get a bit lost in the work. We don't ask ourselves, like, is it enough? Sometimes we just want to tell everybody, I want to put all these facts about my product into a post, into a packaging. Or sometimes you just want to get things done and you never really assess, like, actually, I actually give people enough information, enough context to know what I'm talking about. I think that question is such a good question to ask ourselves to check in with whether we are moving in the right direction. Awesome. How about you, Qiyun?
It's interesting to hear all that because I sort of take the other approach where storytelling is a byproduct of a lot of the content that I create. Also because I realize that how I like to create things is that when I create content, it's always very resource driven. Meaning, am I creating a resource and how will you use it? Or what question am I answering for you? Or what pain point am I solving for you? So small plug, but what just came out today for me was I did a whole infographic telling people if you are spring cleaning, these are the 10 gazillion ways that you can do things without dumping it as Salvation Army. Because I know that in many people's hearts, you want to do the good thing, but you're too lazy or you find it too overwhelming to figure everything else out. And if I can short circuit that process through my art, through my visuals, perhaps that would give you less of an excuse not to do certain things. And I always think about that. Someone from one of my marketing teams in my company told me this concept of black social media or dark social media, sorry. And what that means is, are people downloading your content, sharing it within Slack channels? How are they using your infographics to inform business decisions that metrics, vanity metrics will never show you? Meaning, am I creating content that your chief strategy officer will send the operations team and be like, we need to do something about this? And I see that come out a lot when I create my content because sometimes people will tell me like, hey, your post about this on LinkedIn reached my operations guy and now we're changing certain things because they didn't realize this about plastic bottles. And I always think about that, right? Like, how are we using comms and visuals as advocacy so that when it gets into somebody's hands, how are they going to use this? And I always find the difficult balance between that and also the emotive part about storytelling, because then it means that my piece sometimes comes across very non-emotional. So it's a bit of a mix of what am I creating and who is it for?
Yeah, nice. I think if I'm not wrong, I recently read that Singapore is the #1 consumer of plastic bottles. I think per capita or something like that. We have the most amount of people using plastic water bottles. I was like shocked. We got like PUB, we can on the tap and we can drink water. Sometimes we are kind of like, we wouldn't think these are issues that we probably have. Right. So I love how that sometimes we need to be challenged and we need to still learn a lot of things and be open to a lot of new ideas. So I think that emotional aspect that you mentioned and try and balance it with like hard facts is something that everybody needs to kind of nudge and work with. For myself, previously I was working in Prime Minister's office, so I'm always doing storytelling for them. But on the future strategies, like talking about things like 40 years in the future, things that you might not be able to relate to, like brain-computer interfaces. And of course, one of the things that we used to talk about was also like generative AI, and I think as Wei Choon already alluded, and Choon also talked about like big data and things along that lines. Now we have a lot of resources, and we can learn how to animate. We can get a lot of things done with AI. Well, where do you think is the state of storytelling now? And maybe sketching, because now it's like, okay, I can produce this very high fidelity stuff. Is sketching still important? Is wireframing still important if you already can produce quite a nice looking app through through some prompts? And what we say to people in this industry or even parents thinking about whether this is something that students still can add value in.
Can I share screen? I want to show
Yes.
some sketches. Can I?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to show some ugly things that I draw. And can you all see this?
Yes.
And,
Wow.
it says comics, right? Yeah.
Masterpiece.
So
Yes.
I'll sketch. I'll skip over some bits because these are some things I also wanted to say at other points. But I wanted to show the kind of sketches that I do and how I've sort of used AI before. So our drawings are not the best stuff I can do. I will never go and show people my drawings and say, look at my artwork. But it's something that gets the job done. And here are some examples of like sketches that I do and then the final outcome. And they are not very nice. We also don't do color, and that is on purpose because coloring something would take me twice the amount of time. And I feel like social media, this is something we decided early on that we want to be fast so that if there's something happening, we can make a comic and have it come out and not say like insult our house brand guideline because we didn't have time to do color. So these are strategic choices that I compromise my artistic integrity onto to make happen, and it used to be painful, not so much anymore. So in terms of sketches, usually the one on the left is enough for me already. My rule for sketching is that I don't want to spend more than 5 minutes drawing it because otherwise it will be too hard pain for me to throw it away. And I think sketching or I forgot what it's called. The idea of like UX UI, you do the
Thumbnail
framing and
drawing,
all that. Thumbnail drawing all that is super important. It could be even more important than ever before because I feel like with AI, right, I feel like what AI has really done for art is that it has made rendering no big deal. Not that it's true all the time lah, but just the mainstream perception of it is just that yeah, you render very nice. Yeah, AI also can do. So what I like more and more is now things I process. I find that things on IG that has become very attractive to me are things like the performative aspect of art, like somebody drawing with a fountain pen, scratching on a watercolor paper that's textured. That is soothing and healing to me in a ways that it wasn't before AI came around. I don't know why, right? And all this ASMR stuff is great. But what I also like is to keep mistakes in. So I actually don't like to finish my things off too nicely anymore. I like to keep it some like humanity inside. And as a result, like the sketches are very, very rough online. And these are things we send to clients, you know. So I also want to show like some ways in which our artwork has evolved. These are the earliest things that I've drawn for the works I made. These are things that I drew on my way home from work on the train on my iPad because we started the work salary as a side hustle. So these things I can't even look at it. I mean, I'm not looking at the drawings now because they are so bad. The font is also I cannot take it. I don't know why I chose that font last time. And I insisted on having small caps. I don't know why. You know, so these things we have changed over the years and we've been adjusting as we go. And I'm still open to things changing. Some more examples of early storytelling, which is just complete nonsense to me. Like I remember the one about cutting shit out of my life. Like, I mean, is there no better way, 2019 Wei Choon, to show the idea of cutting shit out of your life than literally cutting a piece of shit out of a piece of paper, right? I look at it and I cringe, but these are the early things, and these things went viral and were good for us. So I'm quite forgiving. I just can't look at it. And these are some examples of recent sketches also that I've sent to client. Like we're doing a piece now about how, as a millennial, Gen Zs make me worried. So the first image you can see is a millennial with some badges on their chest, and they're surrounded by a sea of fresh graduate Gen Zs that have the same thing. The idea of the graduate hat and the badges is clear enough. So I just scroll the rest. I think the idea can tell Ken already. I really have no ego attached to my sketches anymore nowadays. Since also I have a colleague that can finish stuff off for me, and she's better than me, and she's faster than me. So I really don't care about my ego as an artist anymore when it comes to sketching. I think that's helped a lot in terms of prototyping stories and testing ideas out very quickly. And then this is an example of a thing that we did about AI. This was a sponsored collab with NLB. We're writing about AI. And sometimes I choose panels to have fun with. And this is such an example. I really like drawing action sequences. So sometimes I leave aside 1 or 2%, like 10 to 12%, 10 to 20%, sorry, of the work that I will have some fun with and I would try my best and have some fun. In this case, this is an example. And then also sketching makes it so that they want to change the robot because they don't want to scowl because client a bit scared. Then we have to change the robot to a non-robot. It's not so painful because I sketched it so quickly. The last example, this one, it was the same AI story. I cheekily tried AI for this story. So this is made with the Bing AI. The thing that you see on the left was something. So I typed in like 2 people being surrounded by robots. So what I did was I still had some artistic ego. I didn't want to trace it. I redraw a new composition, but I just take some of the inspiration of the robot design from what I saw from the Bing AI thing. But I don't use AI apart from that. I don't judge people who use AI. And when I teach students and they have to submit assignment, what I tell them is, if you want to use AI, go ahead. Because if you want to use it and hide it, I also won't know. But at least use it in a way that I can't tell that it's AI. Make it interesting. If the hands is wrong, please fix the hands. That's as far as I go. So that's kind of some sharing that I wanted to do about AI in particular. Yeah.
Nice.
Hope that helps.
Well, that's great, super insightful. And before I jump on to other people to share, I think you mentioned twice this second time you're mentioning about the ego and the artist ego, creator's ego. I think it's true whether you're an illustrator, whether you're a UX designer, whether you're even a policy designer, right? When you put something out, you have a certain level of ego or attachment to the thing you create. So what do you mean by, or how do you come to put down that ego?
So actually the biggest lesson I learned was after graduation, right? And I'm just looking for people to collaborate with me. And it was so difficult to find good people. And I realized that all the time I spent at school, right? I don't know what it's like nowadays or what it's like in TP, right now. But when I was in school, it was so competitive. And I feel like I wasted so much emotional energy and time, right? And it's not coming from a bad place. I just was worried that I was not good enough because I want the best out of what I can do at art. And I'll be so jealous of my other schoolmates are. And this jealousy, one story that I remember was like I was in the class, right? We're just hanging out doing our assignments, and then I noticed that one of my classmates doing something else different. And I'm like, hey, what are you working on? And then she was trying to tell me that, oh, it's a bus competition. Then if you win, right, your artwork will be on the bus, and you can win $5,000. This other classmate came around and said, hey, no, don't tell him. If you tell him, then got more people like being competition, then it's harder for us to win. And that's just the worst thing, right? Like, why would you do that? Like, you should get better by, like slingshotting each other. So I should want my classmate to do well so that when they get the opportunity and they need help, right, they can slingshot me to that position as well, instead of just stepping people down so that you can be better. That is a bad way to win. And when you graduate, you'll find out that actually all you want are just people that are just as talented as you or even better than you, so that they can work together with you and you can leverage each other's strengths. So if you're still in school now and you feel this insecurity, right, chances are that there are people who are intimidated by you also. They just don't dare to tell you. So if you're in school, right, and you like somebody's work, I suggest, right, go up to your classmate and say, actually, I always want to tell you this, you're super talented and you make me damn scared. And this hit me one time because I was in class and it was like a studio critique thing. I showed my work and I was super low self-esteem. I still am, right? And then another classmate of mine who I am super intimidated by came to me and said, hey, bro, can you not go first next time? Because you spoil the market. I'm like, I spoil the market. You are damn good, dude. So chances are this is already happening. So give kudos out to your classmates if you can bear it. And I think this will help a lot. When you start being more generous with feedback, you let go of ego so quickly and you become more open to collaboration. And that's the way to go, I believe. Yeah.
I think that's right. Even you cannot make it on your own. And no matter how talented you are, you always need people around you to support you and even advocate for you in every way and every sense of that word, right? I can see one of my students already saying that this is very insightful. But yeah, I do remember seasons in my life where you're trying to beat other people. In that sense, you think it's a competition.
Yeah.
It's destructive. I think it's part of the destructive red race type of mindset.
We are all in this together. The industry is tough enough as it is. We don't need to fight within ourselves. Yeah.
That's good. That's a great point. Thanks for sharing. Qiyun or Chun, do you want to add any other things?
I think the collaboration aspect that Wei Choon brought up is actually really important for us as well, because when we show, like, I'm going to show like chicken scratch sketches, okay? But this is like, we do things like this, and then you have to kind of like test, like, does it work? Does it make sense? Should we add one more frame in front? Should we have all this in one frame instead of spread out? And then all those things, you, after working with people a lot, you realize that like your eye is not the same as other people's eyes, and everybody will see things differently. And so in order to create something that will appeal and make sense to more people, you have to show it to more people before you decide to put it out into the world. And there is a valid opinion in everything that like you ask people for lah, basically, especially when you have chosen a team of people to work together with. Ultimately, you don't want to be in a situation where you put something out and then someone or even yourself has to go like, yeah, but actually we could have done it like this way, and I think it would have done so much better. So to get past that step first, instead of making it about like, I need to have this is my piece, it needs to be shown to other people, I think, because ultimately it might work better and get closer towards the result you want, the feeling that you want to get of, okay, this piece has like succeeded, or this piece has like achieved the goal that I set out to achieve with it.
Yeah, nice. I think like what Wei Choon also mentioned about the goal. Sometimes the work became the goal, and then we forgot what we are doing for. And actually, what we want is to impact people. Like, all you mentioned about that. Qiyun, how about yourself? Are you going to show some drawing also? I felt like.
Oh my god. I can relate to the sketches because that's exactly what I send clients also. But I have to always put a disclaimer. These are just sketches. Please do not take it for what it is. It's just for flow, because they will see it as like, how come you're artist then your draft like that? It has to be. And I feel that the disclaimer is important, especially when you're working with agencies, especially comms people. I work a lot with comms and marketing teams, and they don't get it. They don't realize that this is part of the process. They expect the final. Yeah, correct. So then I'm like, yeah, relax. It's just for you to okay the copy. Especially with government and corporate clients, they panic when they see it. But I also wanted to say that I think, especially if you are doing some project and it's extremely detailed or extremely factual, and you go down the rabbit hole of being too fascinated with like your subject matter. And Justin, I think you mentioned this about, you become so obsessive about your product. I think having an extra pair of eyes, especially an extra pair of creative eyes, always helps, because I remember doing a piece that I did on climate projections, and I'm very well versed in climate projections. And after I did the piece, one big mistake was not sending it to another artist to be like, does this make sense? Because someone read it, and I had one of the like senior government people being like, I don't get it. And I was like, oh shit, it could have helped with another pair of eyes, especially creatively, so that I don't get like comments like, hey, can you shift this here, not realizing how many layers I have to move and such just to move something. Yeah, so it really helps working with people, especially when you know that, I mean, it's the whole idea of abundance thinking, right? You're not here to steal from each other. You're here to help each other, especially when there are more opportunities that arise.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Sometimes when we need to put that disclaimer out there. I think we need to sometimes get people's raw opinions and raw perspectives. And I think while generative AI is very powerful, and I think it will bring us a lot of good as well. But sometimes when something looks too polished, we kind of like shut down our thinking a little. We like say when we go 100%, then we are not like our ego step in, or maybe we feel like, okay, I want to push this out, and then we don't really think about anymore. Like, is this good enough? Is this and sometimes you get so impressed, I think, even by some of the visualization, like, let's put in more, let's cram in more. I think like what children are saying, so it's like, is it too much? Are we communicating the right things, or are we getting so caught up by the pretty things that we don't think about, like, hey, this might be actually telling a whole different message because you chose to leave it inside. But I think it's great, and I love how the three of you own sketching and say, like, it can still be good. It can still communicate a story without necessarily being like very pretty, by certain standards that maybe people assume that a work needs to be in order to be effective. Great. I'll let Kat take over. She's going to ask a few more questions directed to you guys, some student-related ones. Then we'll jump back in and maybe wrap up with maybe one or two more. While she's asking, you can also, if you're in the chat and if other questions you want to ask, you can put it down inside.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Yeah, okay, so my first question is to Choon. So for design students like myself, right, aspiring to create impactful visual content and honestly finding our own style, what advice do you have in terms of developing our style and effectively communicating complex messages through the designs?
Okay, so this one I saw and I knew that I had to write it down, so I have written it down. I'm going to read from my notes now. The truthful answer is I don't even know what my style is now. And if anything, I've learned over my career and educational path that it's fine to have a style that changes with time and is really the nature of creative work. However, if you're talking about doing illustration as a job and starting some sort of brand, then yes, there needs to be consistency. And then that just becomes about finding one option from all the examples that you've seen out there that you're confident that you can do. Take that as your starting point and try to make it better. Because the more you draw it, that it will never be in a one-to-one. It will never be a one-to-one replica of like whatever you're looking at. For example, I really love this artist called Mobius. Will I draw like him one day? Probably not. But through trying to copy, you inevitably make some adjustments where you realize that, oh, actually I don't like this, or actually I like this from the other artist, let me incorporate it. And so that is how you kind of find your own style. And in terms of communication, is what I've mentioned earlier is like to always test it with others. I think that's still true. And not to be someone that looks down on others, but when we create content, especially at Ribbit, we always try to work with the assumption that this person knows nothing about what I'm talking about. They are starting from like level 1 or level 10. It's not like they are subject matter experts. And so you have to adjust your language and your presentation to suit a way that is able to convey this message to as many as people as possible from and across a wide like spectrum of levels of understanding. So that's why one of my favorite content series is this series by Wyatt called 5 Levels of Difficulty.
Yeah.
I really like it because it shows the nature of like a teacher or an expert, where it's one concept and it may be a very difficult concept, but if you can explain it to a 5-year-old, then you've done your job, because the explanation that you give to a 5-year-old will work for everybody else. It cuts out a lot of the stuff that makes people turn away from complex information in the first place, which is like, I need to look at the dictionary to look at this word, or like I need to understand what logistical regression is. Like, I don't know that, therefore I turn off. I'm gonna turn off my brain because this is not for me. This is too complex. So we try to make it simple. Yeah, and that's generally how we try to gear our work in terms of communicating complex messages.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Okay.
A quick story. Back when I was working in Black, my boss would say like, your logo must be something that a 5-year-old can understand. And another thing he used to say was like, he would say like, if your design cannot be understood by your mother, like it probably is not gonna work out. So
I
I remember
apologize to all the 5-year-olds out there. This is not a slight
Shots.
towards your level of understanding.
But I remember actually in my first few years crafting logos, I remember actually going to my mom and my mother-in-law. Literally, I said, "Do you understand what my logo is saying?" And then when they understood that, I'm like, okay, this is a hit. This actually communicated something. Nice.
Yeah. I should adopt that strategy more often, actually. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Chu. Okay, so for my next question, it will be directed to Wei Choon. So I'm pretty sure everyone here reflecting on your journey had to face many challenges, right? Whether as a designer, collaborator, or entrepreneur. So how do you balance passion and practicality?
Actually, I don't even try to balance passion anymore. I rather replace the word passion with the word purpose because it's slightly different. Passion means something I'm doing for myself. Purpose means something I'm doing to help other people. And I think it's also inherently rewarding if you can have something that's purposeful, not just something that you're passionate about. So the idea of practicality is a difficult one because it is a very tough role for creatives right now, especially if you're graduating right now. So yeah, it's very boring advice. It's just all the shit that we always say on work segment. It's things like save money, budget, watch your spending, spend below your means and things like that. But it's also a lot of it is also understanding that selling out is not a bad thing necessarily, and it's not a forever thing. So for me to be able to start the work salary man, being a very risk averse person, I'm not naturally very entrepreneurship. I don't have a very sexy story of how I threw caution into the wind and I dived off the cliff of entrepreneurship and I managed to fly just as I was about to hit the. It's all very safe. I had a decent amount of money saved up. I saved up $36,000. I paid off my uni debt of $25,000, so I got no outgoing thing. I paid off my reno loan also. Then I slowly start the business. So it's a very boring story. And that is, I think, the key to practicality. Practicality means you averse and avert from risk. And I think it's okay to do that as a creative. And I felt so bad about it last time because I'm like, oh no, I'm selling out. Because one of the things I did was that I joined the medtech firm for a lot of higher pay. I jumped from like I was working at Mothership for 4.8K a month, which is pretty good. But I was a manager, like I asked them for a raise, they won't give me, right? So I jumped to a medtech firm that is doing things I'm completely not interested in at all because they were able to pay me more money. Because I asked for 6K and then they said, yeah, okay. And then I joined. And I felt bad about it because I'm like, oh no, all my schoolmates going to judge me because I'm doing a job and I'm earning money. I'm not like pushing the edge of the boundaries of whatever art, this and that. But actually, the schoolmates that mattered didn't judge me. They were happy that I was able to achieve my life goals. And also, earning 6K a month for a while and being very prudent about the way I live and spend my money meant that I had enough of my savings saved up. I cleared my debt so that when it came time and I had something like the work salary man as a side hustle that had promise of potential, I could quit my job and give it a good 6 months of a full-time effort at it. And that made all the difference because if I didn't have that savings, right, I tried for 3 months and I had to go back to work, it would have killed me thinking about what if I just gave it one more month? Would it have worked out? So being very boring and uncle and risk averse actually helps a lot in merging not just passion but purpose with practicality. So that's why I advise it's okay to sell out for a while. A sellout is not a brand that you burn onto your body, and then everybody in the community will judge you. Nobody cares. Everybody's just struggling trying to make ends meet. Then you can do art and somehow make money. Wow, it's a bonus. I'm happy for you. That's how you should think about it, I think.
Yeah, that's very true though.
Yeah, we got bills to pay, we got mouths to feed. It's true. I like the you replacing the word passion for purpose also. Because sometimes not just even in finance, right? We're talking about, you know,
Life.
the nature of our work, changing life, you might have kids, you might have, aged parents, things come your way. Yeah, passion is not gonna do so much for you. And if you don't like your work anymore, doesn't mean that you can't continue to excel in it. So I think purpose driven is something that
I
we
think
need
passion is great as an X factor to multiply your efforts because it gives you extra drive. It's
Yeah.
useful also and it's good to have. It motivates you, but passion alone is not enough to feed. Yeah.
We just release our new branding, school branding, design the future with curiosity, courage, and purpose. So I'm like, yes, we did it.
Let's go. Okay, so thank you, Wei Choon. So for my last question is to Qiyun, right? So for sustainability often requires collaboration across various disciplines. And for TP design students, we're also learning a lot about sustainability, even though we may not fully understand it. So how how do you work with other professionals and represent a diverse topic such as our climate and environment well through your designs and illustrations?
Yeah, I think because I was in environmental studies, I am very lucky to have access to a lot of people in the space who have stories to tell, but no time to tell those stories. That meant that I worked with people who were studying glaciers in very remote parts of the world, or they were studying like, yeah, someone actually found some 16 or like 20 something new fly species that nobody in Singapore will ever see in their lifetimes. And I thought like, okay, actually this is quite cool. Like there are all these things and people to work with, but I'm also very clear on my platform that I'm not the expert. And I think that's also important to realize. And back to the ego bit, right? Like, okay, I'm an environmentalist, but there's only so much I know and so much I can say. And I need to rely on other people to tell the same story. So in that way, you know, I work with people that I trust to feed me accurate enough information. I work with people who also understand what I'm trying to get at, because I've had instances where I work with scientists and they send me 12 pages with citations. And the good thing is, okay, I know how to read scientific papers, but it's like, how in the world am I going to turn this into a comic, and then a scientist will come and be like, hey, actually, you never put this, you never put that. There are uncertainties with this, you cannot represent it like that. So I feel that it's also important to build that credibility. Like if you want to talk about sustainability, you also need to know your stuff to be able to counter propose and be like, no, that's not it. I'm still going to be scientifically sound. So yeah, it's also tricky lah. And I think, you know, as if you're not in sustainability, trying to pick up sustainability, I can imagine how overwhelming it is. But exactly what you said, Justin, I don't know whether it's a good or bad thing that more people are learning about sustainability, because on the other hand, people get confused when the messages are mixed. I've seen a lot of marketing content that say very not truthful things about sustainability, but I know it's to pay the bills. But and one thing that I often advocate for is, you know, it's not just about working with professionals. I think for something like sustainability, same as how healthcare and finance industries do it, regulations actually make us more creative on how we tell these stories and how we can be better communicators. It's like how in the healthcare sector, you cannot say like, oh, my drug is going to solve this cancer or solve that disease. There are rules that says you must talk about the problem and present your drug as a potential solution. And sustainability is the same way. I feel that if we impose those restrictions on ourselves, we are actually a lot more creative without worrying about the fact that, you know, we're working with half truths or untruths in order to make sure that the message gets across. So yeah, I think with that, then you're always getting fact checked by a lot of people in the industry, and collaborating with people just ensures that I cover all my bases. But it also means that I have so many stories still to tell, and that excites me. And I know, Choon, we talked about how finding sustainability stories is very difficult. But on my end, it's like, oh my God, there's so many. I just need to pick one and hopefully run with it or make that a story. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool, to be honest. Yeah, honestly, I do like try to do my research about sustainability, and it can get overwhelming. So I did see like a little bit of your illustrations, and it's really cool. So
thank you. Yeah, and I would highly recommend, if it's an industry that you're keen on, feel free to always join industry activities. Or if you want something completely left field, I have friends who do herpetology, which is the study of reptiles. Just go on a herping walk with them. I've even brought Rui Ming. Yes, correct. I recognize that art when you were drinking water. Yeah, and I think when you hear from all these very passionate people, you also get inspired to want to write their stories or tell their stories.
That's really
Yeah.
cool. Okay, you guys. Yeah, that's all
Thanks,
from
Kat,
me.
for the questions. Thanks, Kat, for also preparing the questions also that came earlier. I think I'm super impressed. I'm learning a lot about from you guys as well. And I think that's what's exciting about getting diverse perspectives and diverse backgrounds. So maybe just a final thought. If anybody has any questions, you can also chime in. I want to ask you, how might you advise designers or non-designers to get started in sketching, you know? Or how can educators think about these things like sustainability and sketching, finance, literacy, things along that. How could they bring this into their curriculum or into their culture, right? I think Qiyun just now mentioned about how her images her visuals kind of like impacted operations in certain companies. So I think we also need to see it from a broader place that we could actually be affecting think more things if more people knew how to get started.
So the question is about pedagogy, like how do we?
The question, I guess, if they might not be illustration students but we're just doing UX or architect or graphic design. How can they bring like sketching into their process, and even if they're not designers?
Well, just in terms of sketching, maybe I can say I feel like prototyping is very important, and nowadays I feel like it's more important to not just do projects for school, but to actually try to do things that have real life impact. So even if say you're a UX designer, right, you should think about how to do something where you can do it as part of class also, but think about how to affect real change. Like let's say you're a UX person, you can design something to, I don't know, my mom-in-law always asks me how to use SingPass, how to do this and do that. Maybe you can design a solution that helps them to solve that problem, or design a series of videos or something that solves the problem, something iterative that you can just put out very quickly. I feel like polishing something really is quite, it's not say overrated, it's not a very efficient use of your time. Nowadays it's all about putting something out fast, then iterating. Like I show my sketches and my early drawings, it's really not good lah, so honestly, it's not good. It's just very fast to do, and it's not perfect. I'm not also proud of it or whatever, but it was the start that we needed to get to where we are now. So if you can, like, think about ways to do things that are just enough. The key term here that I learned from my manager at the medtech firm that they use a lot is MVP. Not most valuable play, but minimum viable product. What is something that you can do that is just enough, and get very good at doing things to a point where it's just enough? Somebody mentioned that it was about I think it is Pylin said that I found that when you're almost done with the work, like only 70% just share it. I think that's a great way to think about it, because honestly, I feel like a lot of times if you're doing work to the polished level of say your 90 or 95%, right? Only the top 10% of practitioners in your field can understand it. Clients can only get to about 65% comprehension of how nice your art is. That was one of the heartbreaking things when I entered the industry. I do until so nice, and okay, good enough, let's go. Hey, wait, did you see the detail that I put in, that I referenced this? Okay, that's cool. We didn't see it, but thank you for pointing it out. Anyway, and it's like, it's a heartbreaking thing, but that's reality. So get very used to doing just enough, and I think sketching is the very essence of that.
That's great.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I would add on as more of like a shift in perspective thing with regards to sketching is what I found very hard initially was to really like start putting the pen to paper, because you're so afraid of like getting it wrong. And something that my ex-colleague said to me and still resonates with me nowadays, and this is what I tell my team now whenever we start sketching or whenever we start putting out stuff, is that no one is going to die. Just do it. No one will die if you get it wrong. Just put it out there. Maybe you do 10 and only one works. That's fine. Then that one can turn into 3, and then you just keep going, and eventually you'll get to where you want. Yeah, it may not be what you set out to do, but you will be happy with the end product.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I think for me as a I wasn't illustration trained, right? So I really resonate with the whole concept of just make the damn ugly thing and then put it out there and you forget it and you move on to the next ugly thing. Because exactly Rachel, like if I see my very first post, I'm just like why did I do this? Why was I using all these things? But someone asked me like, to clean your feed, are you going to delete these things? And I said no, because I also want to see how my art has evolved over time. Why did I choose? I have the opposite issue where I use colors to distract and to disarm. So it was a very intentional choice of using color, but I chose amorphous character to personify a lot of things because I don't want to draw face and then worry about cut hair or like whatever. And I just thought that, okay, if I just do it, I realize I don't like it, then you fix it up in the next post. And I think the other thing is also really just finding a topic can be very overwhelming. Like Kat, you say, right? It can be overwhelming. But I do follow this account called makingmeaning.sg, and I believe an artist runs the account, and she's constantly putting up requests from NGOs saying, we need designers to help with posters for this NGO to do things. It's always good practice, and it's a great time experimenting with what works and what makes an impact, especially if you know your design can help an organization get more funding, get more outreach. So yeah, I've been now experimenting with new forms of storytelling with interactive web design, which I have zero experience in, but it's really, and I've been sitting on this project for 3 years. That's how long I've been procrastinating it. And the issue was always about, I wanted to be perfect before it goes out. But I think even after this now, I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be like 50%, and it needs to get the job done. So I also take that away as a kick in the butt to get things done.
Nice. Making meaning is also a shout out to Danielle from somewhere else. Also a TP alumni. Woohoo! Yeah, she's the associate creative director of somewhere else, who's also doing a lot of this kind of social good thing. And I think it's important, right? And I like I've learned a lot. I think and I think it's true. Like, you know, you want to fail, you want to try, you know, you want to put something out, you know, do something for good, you know, do something purposeful. Then you're not too caught up with your own ego or trying to make things look nice for yourself. You have a greater goal that you want to hit. So I think I've learned a lot about that as well, and also about of course embracing the MVP and doing things just enough. Like a lot of great insights for you guys. Kat, what do you think was I'm just going to throw it to you. What do you think was like a big takeaway for you?
Honestly, it's the finding like your style in a way. Like you just go for it, just do it. You don't have to make it so perfect. Because especially, for example, like studio projects, right? Whenever we go for consultations, we want to make it perfect to show to our like lecturers, but or like our tutors. But it's more of like the concept, and with regards to like going back to what Wei Choon said also about the whole purpose thing, because before that, I also thought I must have passion about something. I need to be passionate about design. What if I'm not passionate about design? But it's more of like, what purpose do you have in like shining a light with an issue that a lot of people don't understand or may like not properly know about as well. So yeah, thank you guys. It really also helped me like shape my perspective of what being a designer is from a student perspective.
Great. We have two last questions. I think maybe one person can take one. First is Cheryl. Cheryl has a question about finding inspiration. So maybe I can get Chun to talk about it, because I guess their work always has different design styles and things of that nature.
Oh, that's tough. That's very tough, because like I am the most fickle-minded person out there when it comes to this. Like, I think there was a point when doing Vivid, I was like, must really do like one style forever. Like, I hated the idea of doing that, because I just want to do stuff. But then after speaking to many people, especially speaking to the people from the biz and branding side, where they're like, okay, you know what, like if you want clients, right, they want something where you can show them like, okay, this will be what you get. This is your MVP. You will get a comic. You will get a comic drawn in this way. It's an easier sell. So you just do that. But then for inspiration, I find myself looking back now to a lot more of the original infographics and data visualizers out there. So one of them, I think they are called Otto and Marie Neurath. So they're kind of like Charles and Ray Eames, where they are like a designer power couple sort of thing, but they started doing a lot of like infographics that go in, of course, like the agricultural manuals and stuff. But there's something so nice about it being visual and yet communicated in such a simple fashion, where you look at the thing and you understand exactly what it is that they are talking about. Yeah. So the answer to that is just go on Pinterest, or go on Pinterest, go on Instagram. Designer's best friend. Behance if you like it. My personal preference is not to go there because it's like I think it's a lot of like finished work and current work. And yeah, my personal preference is to pull references from that like a bit older, a bit more archaic, and find ways to apply those same concepts or reinvent them.
Yeah, it's true. Nowadays there's so much noise in a sense, right? If especially you and then you kind of miss out like what made it work, what was the essence that it made it work.
Yeah, and I think getting
Inspired
caught
by
up in
it.
trends is probably why I choose not to go on Behance. Yeah. Their cycles are, do you know, like 20-year cycle. What's that? Steve says 30 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna try that.
Nice. Yeah, I think when you go on Pinterest, it's not just to get randomly inspired. It's to have some sort of intention, some sort of clarity that you want to have, that you're looking for. I think for the next question, Geraldine's question, maybe I'll get Qiyun to talk about it, and then Wei Choon, you can wrap up with the last question about the side hustle. Oh no, sorry, maybe the other way around, because Qiyun is still in the side hustle type of thing. So maybe I can Wei Choon to answer the first question by Geraldine.
Yeah, so when it comes to telling a consistent story, the voice was not difficult to find because it is just an averaging out of me and my co-founder. So we have argued about things like that before, and it is important, I guess, in a way. But what is more important underneath that is authenticity, which is to have a certain code that you abide by. And we exercise this code by thinking about and being very picky about the clients and the products that we take on. But apart from that, just in terms of tone and also expression, actually, I've changed the style many, many times. The font has changed twice. It used to be a Unicode font because I like the neutrality of the font, but actually not very legible. Then I changed it to this other font called Sage Sans. It's designed by this designer called Sage because it was very nice to read, and it just felt like handwriting, but it's still proper enough that it can be read legibly without any jumbling of the letters. Then eventually we had to design our own font because we're coming off a book, and then if we wanted to use another person's font on the book, then we had to license the font, and that was a whole big thing. So we just made our own font. Even things like the style, I used to be a lot more looser with the way that our characters were depicted, a lot more looser with proportions of how the facial expressions sit on the marshmallow. Now we're more particular about it, but I've also relaxed the rules when it came to some things like using expressions, for example, like facial expressions. I used to like neutrality because neutrality means that it's not so emotional, but now that we've had some of my colleagues that work with me, they push towards that direction. Then I say, actually, that's not bad. That's quite nice that she used some Japanesey tropes like sweat on the. I used to hate that, like sweat to express frustration because I'm like, yeah, that's such an easy way to do it. But honestly, or like the Japanese, they have these lines. I call it the back check lines. Like these 3 lines showing stress or distress, or the vein in the head, even, right? It's a shortcut because honestly, you won't see the vein come out like that. We didn't invent it. It's a shorthand to achieve communicating an expression. But over time, I'm like, yeah, okay, she makes it look so nice. I also got no better suggestion to show it. And I've also changed the way that I felt about the brand, even though I'm supposed to be the custodian of the brand guidelines. So I feel like a little bit of both is important. You need to set some rules, but you need to be able to bend it and have it evolve. And some of the favorite stuff that I've grown up reading, especially web comics, you just go back and look at the first comic and then the comics I'm making now, very different one. So it's okay to change a bit. I feel like consistency is important, but only in terms of like the way that you can make sense of it. I still think you have to be strategic. We choose black and white. We choose often, we call it botak naked people because it works well for our tone of voice. And because I would like to draw people with muscles, I would like to draw fingers, but it's just a business choice. Then we stick with it. But when it makes sense, yeah, we might put some color in it. I remember when there was a big crash, when the recent economic bubble happened, I just felt like I needed to draw the piece and have red color to indicate the red stock arrow going down. Then bend the style a bit, So as long as your intentionality applied to it, I think it's okay. You can proceed and change the rules as long as you do intentionality. The book is not out actually, but thanks for plugging it here. The book is available for pre-order. Yeah, but it's not out. It's out on late February. Yeah, we also don't have a copy yet. So maybe it's a scam, but it's not. It's not a scam. I'm joking. Thank you. Thanks for plugging.
Nice. I mean, just to add on the topic of like brand and consistency, I think we almost glorify consistency sometimes, or we see consistency as like being the same forever. And I don't think necessarily that's what consistency is. And people are looking for authentic brands, right? Means they also want to see a brand evolve and grow through their process. So I think it's great that you are also looking back and evolving. I can hear that from all of you guys as well, talking about that. I think we see things like brand guides and things like that. So we see like very okay, let's do it this way. But brands are changing. Creativity is changing in that sense. One case study, for example, is McDonald's. Now, I don't know if you heard in US, they are trying out this cosmic brand where they're now going to like a Starbucks kind of venture in the 80s style. So it's very, very interesting that brands are also experimenting. They don't want to be seen as this, fixed, very fixed looking design and very fixed looking offerings. Yeah, sorry. And maybe a team on that note on side hustling and managing our times and things like that.
It's very difficult because I always say that I work a 9 to 6 and then a 6 to 9, because it requires me. I'm essentially trying to do 2 jobs at the same time, right? And I would say that even till today, I am now at the inflection point of when do I want to freelance fully, and what does that mean? Not just for me financially, but the biggest worry is always exactly what you said, losing that authenticity. Because what if now I have to accept deals that I don't agree with or do not align with what I speak about or what I stand for, just so that I can pay my rent that month? And I struggle a lot because if your side hustle becomes, you lose a lot of that freedom from that side hustle when it becomes a full-time gig. And you also, I feel that it becomes very personal when things don't work out. Because now in my day job, it's like, okay, I do or don't do, I earn that salary regardless. But now that what I do or what I don't do reflects on how I'm earning that year, or the fact that I'm going to be thinking about that all the time, as though I'm not thinking about it all the time now. It's just very, very tricky. But I would say that I think it gave me the kind of freedom to experiment, to try different styles. And I feel like if you're starting out alone at the first time, it's always tricky because you feel like you have to get it right, consistency from the beginning. But as a side hustle, you can do whatever and realize that I've done this for 5 years now. It's completely different, and it allows me to work with different people and not worry about like, oh my God, I can't pay you because I now have saved aside some money to pay you to try this. And then, they always talk about product market fit in the product or tech world. It gives me the flexibility to find out what sells and what works with my clients, and you build a client base. So I think I always am a big fan of side hustles because it allows you to try so many things that you otherwise would have been too afraid to try. And I think the way I manage it is to set very healthy boundaries. After 6 p.m., it's no 9 to 6 job. I'm not OTing unless I absolutely have to, so that I can spend time doing other things that that makes my heart happy.
Nice, great advice. Yeah, I think you're right. When it's a side hustle, you don't feel that preciousness to it, and I think that's like almost like the consistent theme of today's sharing. Is that I think storytelling is not just a approach that you guys do, and sketching is not just something that you do as your job, but it's also almost like a philosophy that you guys live by in the way you approach and see things. So I think that's really rewarding. It's true. Even today's video call is like just something I just had an idea, and I didn't want to like make it such an official thing, because like then I have to like really take whether it's gonna work. Just try it, minimum viable product. Is it enough? I think it's great, and I think I learned a lot for myself through the process. So I just want to thank Wei Choon, Qiyun, Yikchun, and even Kat for coming down and even just sharing with everybody honestly, candidly about your process, your life, your struggles, and all the things in between. I believe based on for the comments that I've seen, I think a lot of people are getting a lot of things out of it. So thank you so much. If you are still interested, or you came in late, or you want to share it, I will be. I think hopefully we recorded and everything's perfect. But definitely we will be putting it online because I think a lot of people are going to benefit so much for this sharing session that we just did. All right, mindful of time, and I hope everybody get a good rest. Going to be 6 o'clock. Time to do your side hustles now. But thank you once again, Wei Choon, Yikchun, and Qiyun for your insights today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
everybody for joining
Really
as
great.
well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right. Thank you everyone for tuning in.